11:49 p.m. on New Year's Eve. A housekeeper walks into the wrong penthouse. A mafia boss with a bullet wound aims his gun at her heart. She has 3 seconds to prove she's not there to kill him. What happens next traps them together for 48 hours that will change everything. This is a story of survival, power, and impossible choices. If you want to see how far this story reaches, hit like and comment with your city below. Now let's begin. The penthouse door shouldn't have opened. Elena Cross stood in the hallway on the 42nd floor of the Celestine Hotel, her cleaning cart positioned beside her, staring at the mahogany door that had just clicked open under her master key. Room 4201, the penthouse suite. The one with the permanent Do Not Disturb sign that had been there for 3 months straight. She'd been told never to touch this door, never to knock, never to even look at it for too long. But it was 11:49 p.m. On New Year's Eve, and the hotel was chaos. Drunk guests vomiting in hallways, couples screaming at each other through paper-thin walls. Someone had smashed a champagne bottle in the elevator, and the night manager was too busy handling a wedding party gone wrong to notice where Elena went. She just needed 5 minutes of quiet. 5 minutes where she wasn't cleaning up someone else's mess or dodging wandering hands or forcing a smile that made her jaw ache. The penthouse would be empty. It was always empty. She pushed the door open. The smell hit her first. Copper and gunpowder. Then she saw the blood. It started at the entryway. Dark drops on white marble, leading deeper into the suite like breadcrumbs in a nightmare. Elena's hand froze on the door handle. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to run, to pretend she'd never seen this. But she'd grown up in foster homes where running got you nowhere, where the only way out was through. She stepped inside and let the door close behind her. The penthouse was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Miami's glittering skyline, fireworks already starting to pop in distant neighborhoods. The furniture looked like it cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Leather, marble, gold fixtures that probably weren't just gold-plated. The blood trail led past the kitchen, past the dining area, toward what looked like a bedroom. Elena's fingers tightened around the canister of cleaning spray she'd grabbed from her cart without thinking. Like that would help against whatever had bled this much. "You have 3 seconds to explain why you're here." The voice came from her left, deep, controlled, absolutely certain. Elena spun around. A man sat in a wingback chair near the windows, half hidden in shadow. Even sitting, she could tell he was tall, broad-shouldered. He wore a white dress shirt soaked dark with blood on the left side, his jacket discarded on the floor beside him. His right hand held a gun pointed directly at her chest. His face was sharp angles and cold assessment. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. Dark hair silver at the temples, eyes that looked black in the dim light but were probably brown. The kind of face you'd see on a corporate board or a wanted poster, depending on which side of the law you stood. Elena's voice came out smaller than she wanted. She forced steel into it. "I'm housekeeping. I didn't know anyone was here." Housekeeping. He said it like she'd claimed to be an astronaut. At midnight on New Year's Eve. 11:49, she corrected, then immediately regretted it. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Might have been. It was gone too fast to tell. "You're bleeding," Elena said. "Observant. You need a hospital." "No hospitals." The gun didn't waver. 3 seconds are up. "Start explaining why I shouldn't assume you're here to finish what someone else started." Elena looked at the gun, looked at his face, looked at the blood still seeping through his shirt despite the pressure he was clearly trying to apply with his left hand. She'd been held at gunpoint twice before. Once during a gas station robbery when she was 16. Once by a foster father who'd been drunk and paranoid. Both times she'd frozen, gone small, waited for someone else to fix it. She was 25 now. Nobody was coming to fix this. "If I was here to kill you," Elena said, meeting his eyes, "I wouldn't have gasped when I saw the blood. I wouldn't be standing here arguing with you, and I definitely wouldn't be about to tell you that you've got maybe 20 minutes before you pass out from blood loss, which means you should probably put the gun down and let me help." Silence stretched between them. Outside, someone shrieked with laughter. Fireworks cracked like gunshots. The man's jaw tightened. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "I'm very tired." Elena said, "and I've cleaned up enough blood to know what happens when people try to tough it out. So either shoot me or let me look at that wound." Another beat of silence. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun. Didn't put it down. Just lowered it to rest on his thigh, still within easy reach. "You scream, you run, you do anything I don't like," he said quietly. "And brave or stupid won't matter anymore. Clear?" "Clear." Elena moved toward him, each step deliberate. The blood trail made more sense now. He'd been wounded somewhere else, made it back here, and had been slowly bleeding out while Miami celebrated outside his windows. Up close, she could see the pain he was hiding, the way his left hand trembled slightly from the pressure he was applying, the pallor under his olive skin. "I need to see the wound," she said. He studied her for a long moment, then moved his hand. Blood welled immediately from a hole in his side, just below his ribs. Elena grabbed a decorative pillow from the couch and pressed it against the wound before he could bleed out on the expensive carpet. "Gunshot," she said. "Observant," he repeated. "Through and through?" He nodded once. That was something, at least. The bullet had gone clean through instead of lodging inside. But he'd still lost a lot of blood, and infection was a real possibility. "I need supplies," Elena said. "First aid kit, clean towels, alcohol." "Bathroom, cabinet under the sink." Elena hesitated. Turning her back on him felt like stepping off a cliff. But staying here watching him bleed out wasn't an option either. She went to the bathroom, moving quickly. The cabinet was stocked like a small pharmacy. Gauze, medical tape, antiseptic, antibiotics that probably required a prescription. Either this man was extremely prepared or this wasn't his first gunshot wound. She grabbed what she needed and returned to find him still watching her, gun still on his thigh. "This is going to hurt," Elena said. "Everything hurts." She worked quickly, cleaning the wound with antiseptic that made his jaw clench but didn't pull a sound from him. The entry wound was cleaner than the exit wound. Both needed stitches, but she could at least close them enough to stop the bleeding. Her hands were steady. Years of cleaning hotel rooms had given her a strong stomach. Years before that, in a foster home with a nurse who'd taught her basic first aid, had given her the skills. "You've done this before," he said. Not a question. Not exactly this. But close enough. Elena focused on taping the gauze in place. "My foster mother was a nurse. She showed me things. Said you never know when you'll need to help someone. Smart woman. She died when I was 4. Elena didn't know why she said that. Maybe because she was on her knees in front of a stranger with a gun, hands covered in his blood, and normal conversation rules had gone out the window. "I'm sorry," he said, and sounded like he meant it. She finished securing the bandage and sat back on her heels. "You need antibiotics, real medical care. That wound could get infected. I have people who handle that. Then maybe you should call them. Maybe I will." He looked at her properly now. Really looked. "What's your name?" "Elena." "Elena." He tested it, accent making it sound different, softer. "Victor Moretti." The name meant nothing to her. Should it have? "You should rest," she said. "Keep pressure on that, and seriously, call your people." She started to stand. His hand shot out, catching her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her. "Where are you going?" "Back to work. My shift doesn't end until 2. "You're not going anywhere, so—" Elena's pulse kicked up. "You said if I helped you, I said I wouldn't shoot you. I didn't say I'd let you leave." She stared at him. "You can't keep me here." "Elena." Victor's voice was patient, almost gentle. "You walked into a crime scene. You've seen my face. You know my name. You're a witness to something that people have died to keep quiet." He paused. "Or did you think the blood was from a cooking accident?" Her stomach dropped. "I won't tell anyone." "I believe you mean that." "Then let me go." "I can't." He released her wrist and picked up his phone from the side table, wincing at the movement. "Because in about 30 seconds, my people are going to arrive, and if they find you trying to leave, they'll assume you're a threat. And threats get eliminated." "You could tell them I'm not." "I could, but they won't care." He was already dialing. You saved my life, Elena. Let me return the favor. The call connected before she could argue. Marcus, Victor said, I'm at the Celestine penthouse. I need extraction and a clean crew. A pause. No, I'm stable, but I need it now. Another pause, his eyes on Elena. And bring an extra car. I have a guest. He ended the call. Elena's mind raced. The door was 15 feet away. She could run, should run, but Victor's words echoed in her head. Threats get eliminated. How long? She asked. 10 minutes, maybe less. And then what? Then you come with me until I figure out what to do with you. You mean until you figure out how to kill me quietly? Victor's expression didn't change. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead already. What I want is to make sure you stay alive long enough for both of us to get through the next 48 hours. Why 48 hours? Because that's how long it'll take to find the people who did this and make sure they can't try again. He shifted in the chair, pain crossing his face. You picked the wrong night to need quiet, Elena. Story of my life. This pulled something from him that might have been a laugh if he wasn't bleeding. Sit down. Don't try to leave. When my people get here, stay close to me and don't speak unless I tell you to. And if I don't, then you're on your own, and I can't protect you from what happens next. Elena looked at the door again, at Victor, at the blood on her hands. She sat down. The minutes crawled. Outside, the countdown had started. Voices on the street chanting numbers. 10, 9, 8. Do you have family? Victor asked suddenly. No. Friends who'll miss you? No. Boyfriend? Elena almost laughed. When would I have time for that? Good. Good? Makes this simpler. 7, 6, 5. Are you Mafia? Elena asked. Victor considered the question. Yes. At least he was honest. 4, 3, 2. Are you going to kill me? Not if I can help it. 1. The fireworks exploded across Miami's skyline, brilliant and deafening. Through the windows, the city erupted in light and sound. A new year. A fresh start. Elena sat in a bleeding mafia boss's penthouse and wondered if she'd see another. The door burst open. 4 men entered, all wearing dark suits despite the heat. They moved like soldiers, fanning out to secure the room before focusing on Victor. The one in front was younger than the others, maybe 30, with the kind of face that belonged in a cologne ad until you saw his eyes. Sir, he said, taking in Victor's condition with a quick scan. His gaze landed on Elena. Who's this? A complication, Victor said. Marcus, meet Elena. She's the reason I'm still conscious. Marcus looked her over like she was a suspicious package. We should handle this now. No. Sir, she's a witness. She's under my protection. Victor's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Marcus step back. Find Adrian. Tell him to bring the car around. Get the clean crew in here before hotel security notices anything. And Marcus? He waited until the man met his eyes. Elena leaves with me. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Understood. The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos. Men in suits moved through the penthouse with practiced efficiency, removing evidence Elena hadn't even noticed. The blood disappeared. The bullet casing she spotted near the entryway vanished. They worked in silence, communicating with hand signals and brief nods. Victor stood, refusing help even though the movement clearly cost him. He pulled on a clean jacket one of the men provided, covering the bandage. To anyone looking, he'd just be another guest leaving the hotel. Time to go, he said to Elena. She followed because what else could she do? Marcus stayed close to Victor's right side, another guard on his left. Elena walked behind them, surrounded by men who looked ready to kill her at the first wrong move. They took a service elevator down, avoiding the main lobby where drunk guests were still celebrating. The parking garage was quiet, most cars already gone for the night. A black SUV waited near the exit, engine running. Another man stood beside it, younger than Marcus, maybe late 20s. He had Victor's sharp features, the same dark eyes. Dad, he said, the word coming out tight with worry. Then he saw Elena. Who the hell is she? Get in the car, Adrian. Not until you tell me. Now. Adrian's mouth snapped shut. He got in the driver's seat, but his eyes stayed on Elena in the rearview mirror, suspicious and cold. Victor gestured for Elena to take the middle seat in the back. He slid in beside her, Marcus on her other side, boxed in completely. The SUV pulled out of the garage into Miami's bright chaos. Drunk pedestrians stumbled across streets. Fireworks still popped overhead. Music poured from every open door. Where are we going? Elena asked. Home, Victor said. Your home. Yes. For how long? As long as it takes. Adrian's eyes found hers in the mirror again. She's a liability. She saved my life. That doesn't change what she is. Watch your tone, Victor said quietly. Adrian's hands tightened on the wheel, but he didn't argue further. They drove north, away from the glitter of South Beach, away from the hotels and clubs and tourists. The neighborhoods grew quieter, darker, more spread out. Gated communities, private streets, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. The SUV turned onto a long driveway flanked by tall hedges. At the end stood a house that made the Celestines' penthouse look modest. 3 stories of white stone and glass, lit from within like a jewel box. Guards stood at the entrance, weapons visible, now that they were away from public eyes. The gates closed behind them with a final sounding clang. Welcome to your new accommodations, Victor said, temporarily. Elena looked at the house, the guards, the high walls surrounding the property. A prison dressed up as a palace. She'd lived in worse. They led her inside through marble hallways hung with art that probably belonged in museums. The house was beautiful and cold, more showpiece than home. 3rd floor, east wing, Victor said to one of the guards. Post someone outside her door. No one enters without my permission. I'm not going to run, Elena said. I know, but my people don't know that yet. He turned to face her properly. You'll be safe here. Comfortable. Whatever you need, ask for it. What I need is to leave. In 48 hours, we'll discuss it. You keep saying that. 48 hours. That's how long it takes to clean up a mess like this. Find the shooters. Make sure no one else comes looking. He paused. And figure out whether you're going to be a problem. I'm not. I believe you, but belief isn't enough in my world. I need to be sure. Adrian appeared in the hallway, jaw tight. The doctor's here for you. Good. Victor looked at Elena one more time. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning. They took him away, Adrian throwing one last suspicious glance over his shoulder. A guard Elena hadn't seen before appeared beside her, young, professional, hand resting casually on his weapon. This way, miss. He led her upstairs down a hallway lined with closed doors. The east wing was quiet, isolated from whatever was happening in the rest of the house. Her room was larger than her entire apartment. King-sized bed with sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Private bathroom in marble and gold. Windows that looked out over gardens she couldn't see in the dark. Mr. Moretti said to provide whatever you need, the guard said from the doorway. Clothes are in the closet, food in the kitchen downstairs if you're hungry. Don't leave this floor. Or what? His expression didn't change. Or I'll have to stop you, and neither of us wants that. He closed the door. Elena heard the lock click from the outside. She was alone. The room was silent except for distant voices from somewhere below. Men talking, planning, doing whatever it was Mafia families did at 1 a.m. on New Year's Day. Elena walked to the window. The ground stretched out in darkness, broken only by security lights along the walls. There had to be cameras, motion sensors, armed guards. Even if she got out of the room, she'd never make it off the property. She turned back to the bed, still wearing her housekeeping uniform, still smelling like cleaning products and someone else's blood. 12 hours ago, she'd been worried about making rent, about whether to take extra shifts next week, about the fight with her landlord over the broken heating. Now she was locked in a Mafia boss's house, a witness to something people died over, waiting to find out if she'd live to see the weekend. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and started laughing. Quiet at first, then harder, until tears streamed down her face and she couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying or both. When it finally stopped, she lay back on sheets that felt like clouds and stared at the ceiling. 48 hours. She just had to survive 48 hours. To me, somewhere below, in Victor's study, Adrian paced while the family doctor finished examining his father's wound. Through and through, like you said, Dr. Chen confirmed, elderly hands steady as he checked the bandaging. Whoever patched you up did decent work, kept you from bleeding out. The housekeeper, Victor said. Adrian stopped pacing. You're seriously going to keep her here? You have a better suggestion? Yes, the usual one. No. Dad, she's a witness. She saw your face, knows your name, knows you were shot. That's 3 good reasons. She saved my life. Victor's voice was flat, final. That earns her more than a bullet. It earns her a quick death instead of a slow one. It earns her a chance. Victor stood, dismissing the doctor with a nod. I'm not discussing this again. She stays until I'm certain she's not a threat. Then we decide. And if she is a threat, Victor looked at his son, really looked. Adrian had his mother's stubborn streak, his grandfather's ruthlessness. Good qualities in this business. Dangerous ones in moments like this. Then I'll handle it, Victor said. Not you. Because you like her. Because I owe her. Same thing in the end. Maybe it was. Victor didn't know anymore. The gunshot wound throbbed despite the painkillers. His side felt like it was on fire. And upstairs, a 25-year-old housekeeper was locked in a guest room, her life in his hands. Go home, Adrian said. He said, get some sleep. We have work to do tomorrow. I'm not leaving you here with, I have 12 armed guards and a state-of-the-art security system. I think I'll survive one unarmed woman. Victor managed a thin smile. Unless you think she's more dangerous than she looks. Adrian didn't smile back. I think she's dangerous because you don't want to see it. He left before Victor could respond. Alone in his study, Victor poured himself a drink he shouldn't have with the medication in his system and walked to the windows. The grounds were quiet, secure, perfect. He thought about Elena's face when she'd walked into that penthouse, the fear in her eyes when he'd pointed the gun at her, the stubborn courage when she'd told him to put it down. She should have run, should have screamed, should have done any of the 1,000 things a normal person would do when confronted with violence. Instead, she'd saved him, and now he had to decide what that meant. Victor drained the glass and set it down harder than necessary. 48 hours to find out who'd tried to kill him. 48 hours to figure out what to do with the woman who'd stopped them. 48 hours until everything either went back to normal or fell apart completely. He just wasn't sure which one he was hoping for anymore. Elena woke to sunlight cutting through unfamiliar curtains, and a moment of pure panic before she remembered where she was. The Mafia boss's house, the locked door, the 48 hours. She sat up, still wearing yesterday's uniform, her mouth tasting like copper and regret. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. She'd slept through the night somehow, exhaustion winning over fear. Someone had left clothes on the chair by the window while she slept, jeans that looked like they'd fit, a soft sweater, underwear still in packaging. The thought of strangers entering her room while she was unconscious made her skin crawl, but at least they'd been practical about it. She showered in the marble bathroom, scrubbing away the dried blood under her fingernails, watching pink water spiral down the drain. The shower had 6 different settings and water pressure that felt like a massage. Her apartment bathroom had mold in the corners and a showerhead that dripped. The clothes fit perfectly, which was somehow worse than if they hadn't. It meant someone had looked at her long enough to guess her size, had studied her. Elena was pulling on socks when she heard voices in the hallway, male, arguing. Can't just keep her here like a pet. I'm not discussing this with you again, Adrian. Then discuss it with Marcus, with Uncle Sal, with anyone who'll tell you the truth. The truth is, she saved my life. That means something. It means she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Doesn't make her special. Silence. Then Victor's voice, colder now. You're dismissed. Dad, I said dismissed. Footsteps moved away, angry and sharp. A door slammed somewhere down the hall. Elena waited, barely breathing, until she heard Victor's uneven footsteps fade in the opposite direction. The gunshot wound would make walking painful. She wondered if he'd slept at all, or if he'd spent the night doing whatever mob bosses did when someone tried to kill them. She tried the door, still locked. An hour crawled by. Elena explored the room, finding nothing useful. The windows were reinforced glass, probably bulletproof. The drawers were empty except for hotel-quality toiletries. No phone, no computer, nothing that connected to the outside world. She was studying the door lock, wondering if the hairpin trick actually worked, or if that was just movie nonsense, when she heard the click. The guard from last night stood in the doorway, expression neutral. "Mr. Moretti requests your presence for breakfast. And if I'm not hungry? Then you can watch him eat." He led her downstairs through hallways that looked different in daylight. The art on the walls was real, she realized, not prints. Actual paintings worth more than everything she'd ever owned combined. The dining room had windows overlooking gardens that rolled out like something from a magazine. Victor sat at a table set for two, reading something on a tablet. He'd changed into fresh clothes, dark slacks, and a white shirt, but she could see the careful way he held himself. The wound still hurt. He looked up when she entered, dismissing the guard with a nod. "Sit." Elena sat across from him, the table wide enough that she couldn't have reached him if she tried. Probably intentional. "How did you sleep?" Victor asked, like this was a normal conversation, like she was a guest instead of a prisoner. "Fine." Liar. "You'd know, I guess." Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. A woman in a white uniform appeared with coffee, pouring for both of them before vanishing as quietly as she'd come. The coffee was perfect. Elena hated that she noticed. "I had my people look into you," Victor said, setting down the tablet. "Want to know what they found? Do I have a choice?" "No." He picked up a folder she hadn't noticed, opening it. Elena Maria Cross, 25. Born in Tampa to parents who died in a car accident when you were 6. Bounced through the foster system until you aged out at 18. No college. No criminal record. You've worked at the Celestine for 3 years. Perfect attendance, never called in sick. Your coworkers describe you as quiet, reliable, keeps to herself. He looked up. They also say you never take breaks with anyone. Never join them for drinks after shifts. Never talk about your personal life. I'm a private person. You're a lonely person. The words hit harder than they should have. Elena kept her face blank. Is there a point to this? The point is that no one will miss you if you disappear. No family, no real friends. Your landlord will just rent your apartment to someone else. The hotel will hire a replacement. In 6 months, no one will remember you existed. Elena's hands tightened on her coffee cup. Thanks for the pep talk. I'm not trying to upset you. I'm showing you the reality of your situation. Victor closed the folder. You have no leverage. No one coming to rescue you. If I wanted you gone, you'd be gone, and the world wouldn't notice. So why am I still here? Because I don't want you gone. The admission hung between them. Victor reached for his own coffee, the movement making him wince slightly. How's the wound? Elena asked. Painful. The doctor says it's healing clean thanks to your field work. I just stopped the bleeding. You did more than that. He studied her over the rim of his cup. Most people would have run. Some would have screamed. You did neither. Why? Elena thought about the gas station robbery, the foster father with the gun, all the time she'd frozen, gone small, waited for someone else to fix things. I was tired of running, she said finally. From what? Everything. Victor set down his cup. I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Did anyone see you enter that penthouse? No. You're certain? The hallway was empty. I used my master key. The security cameras were down for maintenance. They always go down during big parties because too many drunk guests trigger the motion sensors. And you didn't tell anyone you were going there? I wasn't supposed to be there at all. That room was off limits. Victor nodded slowly, processing. So as far as anyone knows, you finished your shift and went home. Probably, unless someone noticed that I didn't clock out. We'll handle that. He pulled the tablet closer, typing something. I'm having my people access the hotel's employee records. They'll show you clocked out at 2 a.m. as scheduled. Your supervisor will remember you leaving if anyone asks. You can do that? I can do a lot of things, Elena. She believed him. The woman in white reappeared with food: eggs, fresh bread, fruit that actually tasted like fruit instead of the watery garbage from the grocery store. Elena's stomach reminded her she hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday. She tried to eat slowly with dignity, but hunger won. Victor watched her, not touching his own plate. "You're not eating," she said. "Painkillers kill my appetite. You should eat anyway. Keep your strength up." Is that a medical opinion? It's common sense. He picked up a piece of bread, tearing off a small piece more to humor her than anything else. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the quiet broken only by distant sounds from elsewhere in the house. Voices. Footsteps. A phone ringing somewhere. "What happens after 48 hours?" Elena asked. Victor set down the bread. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether I find the people who tried to kill me. On whether anyone else comes looking. On whether you prove to be trustworthy." "How am I supposed to prove that locked in a room?" "You're not locked in a room right now. I'm locked in a house. Same difference." "Is it?" Victor leaned back carefully, managing the pain. "You're fed, clothed, safe. You have a comfortable bed, hot water, anything you need. Most prisoners don't get that treatment. Most prisoners have trials, rights, phone calls." "You want to call someone?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "You want a phone call? I can arrange it. Call whoever you want, tell them you're safe, you'll be back in a few days." Elena stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. But think carefully about what you say and who you call. Because if the wrong people find out you're here, if word gets back to whoever sent those shooters, then you become a target too. And I can't protect you from something you bring on yourself." She thought about her empty apartment, the coworkers who barely knew her name, the landlord who'd probably already changed the locks for missed rent. "There's no one to call," she admitted. Victor's expression shifted, something almost like sympathy crossing his features. "Then you're safer here than you think." "Because no one cares if I disappear?" "Because no one will think to look for you here." The logic was sound and depressing in equal measure. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus entered without waiting for permission, his face tight with tension. "We have a problem," he said. Victor's demeanor changed instantly. Relaxed conversation replaced by cold focus. "What kind of problem?" "The hotel. Someone's asking questions about last night. Security wants to review footage from the 42nd floor." "I thought the cameras were down." "They were, but someone's pushing for an investigation anyway." Marcus's eyes flicked to Elena. "Seems a guest reported hearing gunshots around midnight." Elena's stomach dropped. Victor stood, the movement sharp despite his injury. "Who's asking?" "Management, and they flagged it with local PD." "Handle it." "Already working on it, but if they push hard enough, if someone really wants to look into this, then we make sure they don't find anything worth looking at." Victor's voice was steel. "Get our people in their security office. Wipe the backup drives. Make sure there's nothing connecting me to that room, and find out who reported the gunshots." "On it." Marcus hesitated. "What about her?" "What about her?" "If the investigation goes wider, if they start interviewing staff, they won't find her. As far as anyone knows, she doesn't exist." Victor looked at Elena. "Do you have any personal items at the hotel? Locker? Belongings? A change of clothes, some toiletries, nothing important?" "Marcus, clean out her locker. Make it look like she quit. Forwarding address out of state, something routine. What if her supervisor asks questions?" "Pay them not to." Marcus nodded and left, movements quick and efficient. Elena pushed her plate away, appetite gone. "This is really your life? Covering up shootings? Bribing people? Making witnesses disappear?" "Yes." "And you're okay with that?" Victor sat back down, careful of his side. "I stopped asking myself that question a long time ago." "Why?" "Because the answer doesn't change anything. This is what I am, what I do. Morality is a luxury for people who have choices. Everyone has choices." Spoken like someone who's never had to choose between survival and ethics. He met her eyes. "You grew up in foster care, aged out with nothing, no support, no safety net. Tell me, Elena, How many times did you have to compromise your principles just to keep a roof over your head? Deceit. She wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. How many times had she smiled at guests who touched her without permission? How many times had she cleaned up messes that made her sick, kept quiet about things she saw, looked the other way because she needed the paycheck? That's different, she said weakly. Is it? Or is it just smaller scale? Elena stood, needing distance from his eyes, from the truth in his words. She walked to the windows, looking out at gardens that probably cost more to maintain than her yearly salary. What did you do? She asked. Before all this? Before what? Before you were... She gestured vaguely. This. Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer. I was a lawyer, corporate law, boring cases, good money, respectable life. Elena turned to look at him. What happened? My wife got cancer, stage 4. The insurance companies fought us on every treatment, every medication, said it was experimental, not covered, too expensive. His jaw tightened. I used every legal tool I had, filed appeals, fought denials, threatened lawsuits. And she died anyway, bankrupt and in pain, because the system I'd spent years defending decided she wasn't worth saving. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something valuable. What? That the law protects money, not people. That the system only works if you're rich enough to game it, and that if I wanted real power, real control over my life, I had to go outside the lines. He looked at her steadily. So I did. Started doing favors for people the law couldn't help, collecting debts that courts wouldn't touch, solving problems that required methods beyond what was legal. And I was good at it. How long ago? 23 years. Elena did the math. He'd been younger than she was now when his world fell apart, when he'd made the choice to become what he was. Do you regret it? She asked. Every day. Victor stood, walking to join her at the window. But regret doesn't undo the past. It just reminds you why you can't go back. They stood in silence, watching the gardens. A peacock strutted across the lawn, completely out of place and somehow perfect for this strange house. Your son doesn't like me, Elena said. Adrian doesn't trust easily. Comes with the territory. He thinks you should kill me. He thinks I should protect myself. There's a difference. Is there? Victor turned to face her fully. I've killed people, Elena, more than I can count. Men who betrayed me, threatened my family, tried to take what was mine. I'm not a good man, but I'm not a monster either, and I don't kill people who don't deserve it. Who decides who deserves it? I do. The honesty was almost refreshing in its brutality. So what am I? Elena asked. Guest? Prisoner? Future problem? You're someone who saved my life when you could have walked away. That means something to me, even if it doesn't mean anything to anyone else. He paused. But I need to know I can trust you, really trust you. How do I prove that? Time, observation, seeing how you handle pressure. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression darkening. And it looks like we're about to find out. He showed her the screen. A news alert. Shooting reported at luxury hotel. Police investigating. That was fast, Elena said. Too fast. Someone's pushing this story. Victor was already texting, fingers moving quickly. Marcus was right. This isn't random hotel paranoia. Someone wants attention on that penthouse. Why? To flush me out? Make me show my hand. If I try too hard to cover this up, it confirms I was there. If I do nothing, the investigation might lead somewhere I can't control. So what do you do? Victor's smile was sharp and cold. I do what I always do. I make them play my game instead of theirs. He made a call, speaking rapid fire in Italian. Elena caught maybe one word in 5, but the tone was clear. Orders, threats, plans being set in motion. When he hung up, his expression was calculated. We're going to make this disappear, but it's going to take more than just bribes and deleted footage. What else? A better story, something that explains the gunshots, the blood, everything they might find, but points away from me. He looked at her thoughtfully. And I think you might be able to help with that. How? You still have your employee badge? Your uniform? Elena nodded slowly, not liking where this was going. Good. Because you're going to go back to the hotel and tell them exactly what happened last night. Her stomach flipped. You want me to tell them the truth? No. I want you to tell them a very specific lie. Victor laid out the plan with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Elena would return to the hotel, apologize for disappearing, explain that she'd had a family emergency and had to leave suddenly. She'd been on the 42nd floor last night, had heard what sounded like gunshots from the stairwell, but had been too scared to investigate. She'd assumed someone was setting off fireworks in the building and had left to avoid trouble. You're giving them a witness who didn't see anything useful, Elena said, understanding dawning. Someone who can confirm the gunshots but can't identify anyone. Exactly. It satisfies their need for information without giving them anything they can actually use. And it establishes you as someone who was scared, not suspicious. Someone who ran away from trouble, not toward it. What if they don't believe me? They will. Because you're going to be genuinely nervous, genuinely scared. You won't have to fake that. Victor's expression softened slightly. And because I'll have people there to make sure the story sticks. Security supervisors who will back up your timeline. Coworkers who will confirm you seemed shaken when you left. It'll all fit together perfectly. And if it doesn't? Then you come back here and we try something else. Elena wanted to argue, to refuse, but she could see the logic. If she didn't go back, if she just disappeared, that would raise more questions. This way, she became part of the narrative, a footnote in someone else's story instead of a mystery that needed solving. When? She asked. This afternoon. We'll have everything in place by then. And until then? You wait, rest, prepare. Victor headed for the door, then paused. Elena? Don't try to deviate from the story. Don't try to signal anyone that something's wrong. Because if you do, if you make me look like I made a mistake trusting you, then Adrian was right, and I don't want him to be right. The threat was clear without being explicit. Elena nodded, throat tight. Victor left, and she was alone in the dining room with half-eaten breakfast and a plan that could either save her life or end it. The morning crawled into afternoon. Elena stayed in her room, going over the story again and again in her head. Family emergency. Heard gunshots. Too scared to investigate. Left immediately. Simple, clean, believable. She tried not to think about what would happen if she screwed it up. Around 2 p.m., someone knocked. Not the guard. A woman, early 30s, professionally dressed. I'm here to help you prepare, she said, stepping inside without invitation. Mr. Moretti wants you looking the part. She'd brought makeup, subtle and natural, taught Elena how to look tired without looking suspicious, how to seem nervous without seeming guilty. You've done this before, Elena said. Part of the job. What job is that? The woman smiled, cold and professional. Whatever Mr. Moretti needs. By 3 p.m., Elena looked like someone who'd had a rough night and a stressful day. Dark circles under her eyes, hair slightly messy. The woman even messed up her uniform a bit, making it look like she'd thrown it on in a hurry. Perfect, the woman said. Remember, you're scared but trying to be helpful. You don't want trouble. You just want to explain and move on. Got it. Marcus appeared at 3:30 with her employee badge and a phone. The phone's clean. Use it to call your supervisor. Tell them you're coming in to explain. We've already prepped them, but they need to hear from you directly. Elena made the call, hands shaking slightly. Not because she was faking it, because this was real. And if she messed up, people would die. Maybe her, maybe others. Her supervisor sounded annoyed but not suspicious. Elena, where the hell have you been? You just disappeared last night. I know, I'm sorry. I had a family emergency and had to leave immediately. I didn't have time to clock out properly. What kind of emergency? My aunt in Tampa. She's in the hospital. I had to drive up there immediately. The lie came easier than it should have. But I heard about the investigation, about the gunshots, and I wanted to come in and tell them what I know. You heard gunshots? I think so. I'm not sure. That's why I want to talk to security. Her supervisor sighed. Fine. Come in around 5. We'll sort this out. But Elena hung up and looked at Marcus. Done. Good. We'll drive you. Remember the story. Stick to it exactly. Don't elaborate, don't add details they don't ask for. Answer questions simply and get out. The drive back to the hotel felt surreal. Elena sat in the back of the same SUV that had brought her to Victor's house, watching Miami pass by like she was seeing it through glass. Nothing felt real anymore. Adrian was driving again. He hadn't said a word to her since she got in the car. "You know," Elena said, breaking the silence, "glaring at me in the rearview mirror isn't going to make me disappear." "Worth a shot," Adrian muttered. "Adrian," Marcus said warningly. "What? You want me to pretend I think this is a good idea? She's a liability. One wrong word, and this whole thing falls apart." "She won't say the wrong thing." "You don't know that." "Your father believes she will. That's enough." Adrian's hands tightened on the wheel, but he shut up. Elena stared out the window, trying to ignore the tension. The Celestine appeared ahead, its glass facade reflecting the afternoon sun. She'd walked through those doors 1,000 times. Today felt like the first. They parked in the employee lot. Marcus turned to face her. "You'll go in alone. We'll be watching, but no one will approach you. Tell your story, answer their questions, leave. We'll pick you up here in exactly 1 hour. Understood?" "Understood." Elena got out of the SUV, legs unsteady. The employee entrance was quiet, most of the day shift already gone. She swiped her badge, half expecting it not to work. It did. Inside, the familiar hallways felt foreign. The break room where she'd eaten lunch yesterday looked like a set from someone else's life. Her supervisor, Rita, was waiting in the security office with 2 men in suits. Hotel security and someone else. Police, probably. "Elena," Rita said, relief and annoyance mixing in her tone. "These gentlemen want to ask you some questions about last night." The taller of the 2 men stepped forward, badge visible at his hip. "Detective?" "Miss Cross, I'm Detective Ramirez. We're investigating a report of gunshots in the hotel last night around midnight. Your supervisor says you were working the 42nd floor during that time?" "Yes," Elena said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I was doing my normal rounds." "Did you hear anything unusual?" Yes. I heard what sounded like gunshots, but I thought maybe someone was setting off fireworks inside. People do stupid things on New Year's Eve. Where exactly did you hear these sounds?" "Near the stairwell, between 42 and 41. Ramirez made a note. "Did you investigate?" "No." Elena let her voice shake slightly. "I was scared. I just wanted to finish my shift and leave." "But you didn't clock out. You left without telling anyone." "I got a call. Family emergency. My aunt in Tampa had a heart attack. I had to leave immediately." "You couldn't take 30 seconds to tell your supervisor?" Elena looked down, playing the part. "I panicked. I wasn't thinking straight. I just knew I had to go." The detective studied her, looking for cracks in the story. "Did you see anyone on the 42nd floor? Anyone entering or leaving rooms?" "No, it was quiet. Most of the guests were at parties or out celebrating." "What about the penthouse, room 4201? Elena's heart hammered, but she kept her expression confused. "What about it?" "Did you go near it?" "No, that room's off limits. We're not allowed to service it." "But you were on the same floor." "Yes, but I was working the other end, rooms 4210 through 4220. Ramirez glanced at his partner, who shrugged. The story was checking out. Whatever they'd found in that penthouse, whatever evidence Victor's people hadn't scrubbed, it wasn't connecting to her. "All right, Miss Cross. If you remember anything else, anything at all, here's my card." "Ma de gotes hermanos." He handed it over. "And next time you have a family emergency, maybe take 5 seconds to tell someone." "I will. I'm sorry." Rita walked her out, shaking her head. "You scared the hell out of everyone, just disappearing like that. Is your aunt okay?" "She's stable. Thanks for asking." "Take tomorrow off. Get some rest. You look exhausted." Elena nodded and left before Rita could ask any more questions. The SUV was waiting exactly where they'd left it. She climbed in, hands shaking now that it was over. "Well?" Marcus asked. "They believed me." Adrian pulled out of the lot without comment, but she saw his shoulders relax slightly. The drive back was quieter. Elena stared out the window, processing what she'd just done. She'd lied to police, covered up a shooting, become an accomplice to whatever Victor Moretti was. And the scariest part? It had been easy. When they arrived back at the estate, Victor was waiting in his study. He looked up when she entered, reading her expression. "It went well," he said. Not a question. "They bought it, all of it." "Good." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. We need to talk." Elena sat, exhausted suddenly. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her hollow. "You did well today," Victor said. "Better than I expected. Honestly. You kept your composure, stuck to the story, didn't crack under pressure." "Thanks, I guess. It means I can trust you with more." "More what?" "Information, responsibility, access to parts of my world you haven't seen yet." He leaned forward, wincing at the movement. "The people who shot me, they're getting bolder. That story hitting the news, the police investigation, that's them trying to apply pressure, which means they're not done." "What do they want?" "What everyone wants: power, territory, money. I control shipping routes they want access to. They think if they take me out, those routes are theirs." "Are they?" "No. If I die, those routes die with me. That's how I've stayed alive this long. I'm worth more breathing than buried." Elena tried to process this. "So what happens now?" "Now we find them before they find another way to come at me. And you help." "How can I possibly help with that?" Victor smiled, something dangerous in it. "You'd be surprised what people overlook. A housekeeper, a quiet woman no one pays attention to, someone who can move through places without being noticed." He paused. "You're invisible, Elena, and in my world, that makes you incredibly valuable. You want me to spy for you. I want you to survive. Helping me is how you do that." The logic was sound and terrifying. Elena looked at her hands, still smelling faintly of the hotel's industrial soap. "Do I have a choice?" "You always have a choice, but some choices come with consequences you might not survive." "That's not really a choice then." "No," Victor agreed. "It's not." The next morning, Elena found herself in Victor's study again. But this time Adrian was there too. He stood by the window, arms crossed, radiating disapproval like heat off asphalt. Victor spread a series of photographs across his desk. Men in expensive suits, others in casual clothes that didn't quite hide the bulges of concealed weapons. Some photos were surveillance shots, grainy and distant. Others looked like they'd been taken at social events. "These are the Kozlov brothers," Victor said, tapping two photos. "Dmitry and Alexei. They control most of the drug traffic coming through Port Everglades. We have an understanding. They stay out of my shipping lanes. I don't interfere with their distribution networks." "Had an understanding," Adrian corrected. "Until last week." Victor's jaw tightened. "Until last week, when someone made them an offer they're apparently considering." Elena looked at the photos. The Kozlov brothers didn't look like mobsters. They looked like bankers. Dmitry had gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Alexei was younger, handsome in a cold way, like he'd learned to smile by watching other people do it. "What kind of offer?" she asked. "Access to my roots in exchange for removing me from the equation." Victor pulled out another photo, this one of a man in his 60s with a face like a bulldog. "This is Thomas Reeves, legitimate businessman on paper, runs a private equity firm, sits on charity boards, donates to politicians. In reality, he's been trying to expand into shipping for years. My territory is the last piece he needs. So he hired the Kozlovs to kill you. Hired them to try. The shooters at the Celestine were Kozlov's men. We identified 2 of the bodies they left behind." Elena's stomach turned. "Bodies?" "They didn't all make it out," Adrian said flatly. "The ones who did are in the wind." Victor gave his son a look that said, "Shut up," then focused back on Elena. "Reeves is hosting a charity gala tomorrow night. Black tie. Invitation only. All of Miami's elite pretending they care about underprivileged children, or whatever cause is fashionable this week. The Kozlov brothers will be there, so will half the city's power players." "And you want to go, boss?" Elena said, understanding dawning. "I want to remind them that I'm very much alive, that whatever deal they think they're making with Reeves is dead in the water." Victor leaned back in his chair, still moving carefully. But I can't just walk in there alone. It needs to look social, unthreatening. You want me to go with you? Adrian made a noise that might have been a laugh or a scoff. This is insane. This is necessary, Victor said, not looking at his son. Elena, you'd be my guest, my companion for the evening. All you'd need to do is stay close, look natural, and help me seem like I'm there for the party, not for business. I'm a housekeeper. I don't know anything about galas or charity events or whatever world you people live in. You know how to watch people, how to be invisible when you need to be, how to read a room. Victor's expression was steady. That's more useful than knowing which fork to use. What if someone recognizes me? From the hotel? They won't. Different context, different clothes, different setting. People don't see staff. You know that better than anyone. He was right, and she hated it. How many times had she cleaned rooms while guests talked on the phone, discussed private business, even changed clothes, like she wasn't there? Invisible. Convenient. Forgotten the moment she left. And if something goes wrong, Elena asked, then you stay close to me and you'll be safe. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Adrian pushed off from the window, his patience clearly exhausted. Dad, this is a mistake. You're putting a civilian in the middle of a war zone. It's a party, not a war zone. With the people who tried to kill you. With the Kozlovs, who'd be happy to finish the job if they get a chance. They won't get a chance. You don't know that. Victor stood, the movement sharp enough to make Adrian stop talking. I know that I make the decisions. I know that Elena has proven herself more useful in 2 days than most of my people have in years. And I know that if you question me in front of her again, we're going to have a very different conversation. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Adrian's face flushed, anger and something else, maybe shame, flickering across his features. Fine, he said. But when this blows up, don't say I didn't warn you. He left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Victor sighed, rubbing his temples. I apologize for my son. He's not wrong, Elena said. This is dangerous. Everything is dangerous. The question is whether the risk is worth the reward. What's the reward? Information. Reeves doesn't know I've identified him as the problem yet. If I show up at his event, alive and well, I can watch how he reacts, how the Kozlovs react, who talks to whom, who avoids me. You'd be surprised how much you can learn just by being in the right room. Elena thought about the hotel, the conversation she'd overheard while changing sheets, the arguments through thin walls, the business deals discussed over room service trays. People talked around her like she wasn't there, because to them, she wasn't. She was scenery. What do I wear? She asked. Victor's expression shifted, something that might have been respect crossing his face. I'll have someone take care of it. The someone turned out to be the same woman who'd done her makeup before the hotel visit. She arrived that afternoon with dress bags and shoe boxes and a stylist's determination to transform Elena into someone who belonged at a $1,000 a plate charity dinner. This is completely unnecessary, Elena protested as the woman, who'd finally introduced herself as Sophia, held up a dress that probably cost more than Elena's car. Mr. Moretti wants you looking the part. That means this is exactly necessary. Sophia thrust the dress at her. Try it on. The dress was deep blue, almost black, with a neckline that was elegant without being revealing. It fit like it had been made for her, which it probably had been based on the measurements Sophia had taken with brisk efficiency. How did you even have time to get this tailored? Elena asked, studying herself in the mirror. I didn't. Mr. Moretti has a woman in Coral Gables who owes him favors. She worked through the night. Sophia circled her, adjusting the hem. Shoes next. The shoes were black heels that Elena could actually walk in, which felt like a minor miracle. Sophia did her makeup, subtle but polished, making Elena look like someone who belonged in expensive rooms. Hair up or down? Sophia asked. I don't know. What do you think? Up, more sophisticated. She worked quickly, pulling Elena's hair into something that looked effortless but probably wasn't. There. Look. Elena looked. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, poised, put together, the kind of woman who could stand next to a man like Victor Moretti and not look out of place. I don't recognize myself, Elena said quietly. That's the point. Sophia packed up her supplies. You're not Elena the housekeeper tonight. You're whoever Mr. Moretti needs you to be. After Sophia left, Elena sat in her room, still wearing the dress, trying to process how quickly her life had shifted. 3 days ago, she'd been worried about rent. Now she was preparing to infiltrate a high society gala with a mafia boss. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She expected a guard, but it was Adrian. He stopped in the doorway, clearly not expecting to see her dressed up. Something flickered in his expression, gone too fast to identify. You clean up well, he said finally. Thanks, I think. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I need to talk to you. Your father's not going to like that. My father doesn't need to know everything I do. Adrian moved closer, and Elena noticed he had his mother's eyes. Hazel, where Victor's were dark brown. This gala, tomorrow night. It's more dangerous than he's telling you. How much more dangerous? The Kozlovs aren't just drug dealers. They're violent, unpredictable, and they've been looking for an excuse to move against my father for years. Reeves giving them that excuse is like handing matches to an arsonist. He paused. If something goes wrong, if shooting starts, you need to know what to do. Run? Stay down, get behind cover. Don't try to be a hero. His expression was serious, urgent. My father thinks he can control every situation, that he can predict how people will react. But he's been doing this long enough that he's stopped seeing the risks. You're the unknown variable, and unknown variables get people killed. Elena studied him. You really think I'm going to get him killed? I think you're a distraction he can't afford right now. But since he won't listen to me, the least I can do is make sure you know what you're walking into. Why do you care if I live or die? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Because, despite what you might think, I'm not a monster. And because my father seems to care what happens to you, which means I have to care too. Family loyalty and all that. But you don't trust me. No, but I don't trust most people, so don't take it personally. He turned to leave, then paused. That dress really does look good on you, by the way. Try not to get blood on it. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and a warning she didn't know what to do with. The next evening arrived too quickly. Elena stood in front of the mirror in her room, the blue dress feeling like armor and costume in equal measure. Sophia had returned to do final touch-ups, declaring her perfect before disappearing with the same efficiency she'd arrived with. A guard came to collect her at 7. She followed him downstairs, heels clicking on marble, feeling like she was walking towards something she couldn't take back. Victor waited in the foyer, and Elena stopped breathing for a second. He wore a tuxedo like he'd been born in one, perfectly tailored, making him look less like a mobster and more like he should be on a magazine cover. The gunshot wound was completely hidden. He moved with barely a hint of stiffness, though she could see the careful way he held himself. You look beautiful, he said, and it sounded like he meant it. You look alive, Elena replied. That's probably more important tonight. Victor's mouth twitched with amusement. Probably. He offered his arm. Shall we? The car waiting outside was different from the SUV, a sleek black sedan that screamed money without being ostentatious. Marcus was driving, another guard Elena didn't recognize in the passenger seat. Victor helped her into the back, his hand on her elbow, careful and steady. He slid in beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive that probably had a name she wouldn't recognize. Nervous? He asked as they pulled away from the estate. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He looked at her properly. You remember the story? We met at the hotel. You were staying there for business. I was working. We got to talking. You asked me to dinner, and here we are. Bris. Bato. And if anyone asks specifics? I deflect, change the subject, let you handle it. Elena had practiced this with Sophia, who'd apparently been trained in social engineering along with hairstyling. I'm a private person, Doesn't like to talk about myself. Perfect. Victor adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous gesture that surprised her. She'd thought he was immune to nerves. The Kozlovs will be there. When they see me, they'll react. I need you to watch them. Who they talk to after, who they avoid, whether they leave early or stay late. You want me to be your spy. I want you to be my eyes. There's a difference. The gala was being held at a mansion in Coral Gables that made Victor's house look modest. The driveway was packed with luxury cars, valets in white jackets running between them like synchronized dancers. Lights strung through the trees made the whole property look like something from a dream, or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Victor took her arm again as they approached the entrance. Stay close. Smile. Let me do the talking unless someone addresses you directly. Got it. Inside the mansion was all marble and crystal, with a ballroom that could have fit Elena's entire apartment building inside it. Women in designer gowns circulated with champagne flutes. Men in tuxedos clustered in groups, their laughter too loud, too practiced. Everything was performance. Victor navigated it like he'd written the script. People gravitated toward him, hands extended, faces lighting up with recognition. Victor didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be in the Caymans this time of year. Is this your lovely companion? You've been holding out on us. He introduced her as Elena, nothing more, and let people's imaginations fill in the gaps. She smiled, shook hands, murmured pleasantries she'd heard rich hotel guests use. Nobody looked at her twice. She was decoration, exactly as planned. Then the crowd parted, and Elena saw them. The Kozlov brothers stood near the bar, drinks in hand, watching Victor with expressions that could have been carved from ice. Dmitri, the older one, said something to Alexei that made the younger brother's jaw tighten. Victor saw them too. His hand on Elena's lower back pressed slightly, a signal to stay alert. Dmitri, Alexei, Victor said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard over the music. Didn't know you were art enthusiasts. We appreciate beauty in all its forms, Dmitri replied, his accent thick but his English perfect, especially when it's unexpected. Life is full of surprises, some more pleasant than others. Dmitri's eyes flicked to Elena, then back to Victor. I hear there was some trouble at the Celestine recently. Terrible thing, violence in a public place. Terrible, Victor agreed. Good thing it was just fireworks. People get excited on New Year's Eve. Fireworks, of course. Alexei smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Still, one must be careful. Accidents happen. They do, but I've always been lucky. The conversation was surface-level pleasant and underneath completely hostile. Elena felt like she was watching two poker players reveal their hands one card at a time. A man approached from behind the Kozlovs, older, distinguished, with a politician's smile. Thomas Reeves. Had to be. He had that look, the one that said he'd never heard the word no without finding a way around it. Victor Moretti, Reeves said, extending a hand. I didn't see your name on the guest list. Last-minute addition. I heard it was for a good cause. The best. We've raised nearly $2 million for literacy programs. Reeves's eyes shifted to Elena. And who's this lovely creature? Elena, Victor said, his voice cooling several degrees at the word creature. Elena, Thomas Reeves. He throws these parties to remind everyone how generous he is. Reeves laughed like it was a joke, but his eyes stayed sharp. Generosity is its own reward. Though I find the networking doesn't hurt. I'm sure it doesn't. We should talk, Victor, about opportunities, mutual benefits. I'm content with my current arrangements. Markets change. Arrangements change. It's good to stay flexible. Flexibility is overrated. I prefer stability. The tension was thick enough to cut. Elena felt eyes on them from around the room. People were watching, waiting to see how this played out. Reeves's smile never wavered. Think about it. My door is always open. He moved away, the Kozlov brothers following like shadows. Victor's hand tightened on Elena's back. Let's dance. I don't know how. Follow my lead. We need to move before people start asking questions. He led her onto the dance floor, pulling her into a waltz that was surprisingly gentle given the tension thrumming through him. Elena stumbled at first, then found the rhythm, letting him guide her. Well? He asked quietly, his mouth close to her ear. Reeves is confident. Too confident. Like he thinks he's already won. He does. He thinks I'm cornered, that the shooting rattled me enough to make me desperate. And the Kozlovs? Dmitri's interested, but cautious. Alexei wants me dead. That much was obvious. They turned, and Elena caught sight of Adrian near the entrance, watching them with an expression she couldn't read. Your son is here, she said. Victor glanced over, nodding slightly at Adrian. He insisted on extra security, probably smart given the company. The music shifted, something slower. Victor adjusted his grip, and Elena realized how close they were. Close enough that she could feel his heartbeat through his jacket. Close enough to see the silver threaded through his hair at the temples. Are you in pain? She asked. From the wound? Constantly, but it's manageable. You should be resting, not dancing. I should be a lot of things I'm not. His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. Thank you, by the way. For what? For being here. For not falling apart when most people would have. I'm good at not falling apart. Had a lot of practice. Something that might have been sadness crossed his face. I know the feeling. The song ended. Victor stepped back, the moment broken. I need to make rounds. Talk to a few more people. Let them see I'm fine. Stay close. But if you need air, the gardens are through those doors. Just don't go far. He moved into the crowd, and Elena was left standing alone in a room full of strangers. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, more for something to do with her hands than because she wanted it. The bubbles tickled her nose. It tasted expensive and wrong, like everything else about this night. You're new. Elena turned to find a woman about her age, blonde and beautiful in a red dress that probably cost more than Elena's yearly salary. Sorry, Elena said. To Victor's world, I can tell. You have that look? The woman's smile was knowing. I'm Isabel. I used to date Alexei Kozlov. Emphasis on used to. Elena. I know, people are already talking about you. The mystery woman who showed up with Victor Moretti. Isabel sipped her champagne. Word of advice? Be careful. This world, these people, they'll chew you up and spit you out without thinking twice. Thanks for the warning. Not a warning, just observation. Isabel's expression turned serious. Victor's a good man by our standards, which isn't saying much, but he's also dangerous. And people around him tend to end up collateral damage. Is that what happened to you? With Alexei? Alexei happened to me because I was young and stupid and thought I could change him. Spoiler alert, you can't change these men. You can only decide whether you can live with what they are. She finished her champagne. Good luck, Elena. You're going to need it. She disappeared into the crowd, leaving Elena with more questions than answers. Elena moved toward the garden doors, needing air, needing space from the performance of it all. Outside, the night was warm and humid, the garden lit by soft lights that made everything look romantic until you remembered where you were and who surrounded you. She walked down a stone path, away from the house, trying to breathe. Running away already? Elena spun around. Adrian stood a few feet back, hands in his pockets, looking less hostile than usual. Just needed air, she said. Join the club. He moved closer, not quite invading her space, but close enough to talk quietly. How are you holding up? I've had better nights. Could be worse. Nobody's shot at you yet. The night's still young. That pulled something like a smile from him. Fair point. He looked back at the house, at the lights, and the people visible through the windows. This is his world. Has been for as long as I can remember. And it never gets easier watching him navigate it. You could leave. Do something else. And go where? Do what? This is the only life I know. My father made sure of that. There was no bitterness in Adrian's voice, just acceptance. Besides, someone needs to watch his back, especially when he's making decisions with his heart instead of his head. You mean me? I mean you. Adrian looked at her directly. He likes you, more than he should, more than is safe for either of you. We barely know each other. Doesn't matter, I've seen that look before. The last time he looked at someone like that was my mother, and she died because of what he is. Elena's breath caught. I didn't know. Why would you? It's not exactly dinner conversation. Adrian's jaw tightened. My point is, be careful. With him, with this, with all of it. Because when things go wrong in this world, they go very wrong very fast. Before Elena could respond, gunfire cracked through the night. The sound was unmistakable, sharp and loud, followed by screaming from inside the house. Adrian grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a hedge. Stay down! More gunfire, glass shattering, people running. We need to get back inside, Elena said. Victor is surrounded by guards who know what they're doing. You getting shot doesn't help anyone. I'm not just going to hide while... An explosion rocked the mansion, flames suddenly visible through the ballroom windows. Adrian cursed, pulling out a phone. Marcus, report. What's happening? A pause, his face going pale. Where is he? Marcus, where's my father? Whatever response he got made him move, dragging Elena with him back toward the house, toward the chaos, toward whatever fresh hell had just erupted in a room full of Miami's elite and the people who wanted them dead. Smoke poured from this mansion's east wing, thick and black against the night sky. People streamed from the exits, some running, some limping, all of them covered in dust and terror. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Adrian kept Elena behind him as they moved toward the chaos, his weapon drawn now, no pretense left. Guards in tuxedos formed defensive positions around the property, weapons out, scanning for threats. Stay behind me, Adrian ordered. Don't make me regret bringing you back here. They entered through a side door, away from the main crush of people. Inside was devastation. The explosion had ripped through the ballroom's east wall, scattering debris across marble floors, overturned tables, shattered crystal, a woman's shoe abandoned in the middle of the wreckage. Bodies, too. At least 3 that Elena could see, not moving. Marcus, Adrian shouted into the smoke. Where are you? A cough answered him. Then Marcus emerged from the haze, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. West corridor. We got him out before the blast. Is he hit? No, but Reeves is dead. So is Dmitry Kozlov. Adrian's expression went cold. Alexei? In the wind, probably the one who set the charges. They moved quickly through the mansion, Adrian barking orders into his phone, coordinating with guards and demanding answers nobody seemed to have. Elena followed, her heels clicking on marble littered with glass, the blue dress now streaked with dust. The west corridor was quieter, secure, lined with Victor's people. They parted to let Adrian through, their expressions tight with tension. Victor stood in what looked like a library, jacket discarded, shirt torn at the shoulder, talking rapidly on his phone. His face was smudged with soot, but otherwise he looked unharmed. When he saw Adrian, relief flooded his features. You're okay, he said, ending the call. I'm fine, Elena's fine. What the hell happened? Alexei happened. He planted charges in the ballroom, time to go off during the speeches. Reeves was supposed to give one about the charity, bring everyone's attention to the center of the room. Victor's jaw clenched. Someone tipped us off 30 seconds before detonation. We got most people clear, but not everyone. How many dead? 6 confirmed. Reeves, Dmitry, 4 others. Twice that injured. Victor's eyes found Elena. You shouldn't be here. This isn't safe. Nowhere's safe right now, she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. What does this mean? It means Alexei just declared war, killing his own brother, killing Reeves, destroying half of Miami's elite in one night. Victor moved to the window, looking out at the emergency vehicles flooding the property. He's burning it all down. Adrian holstered his weapon. Why would he kill Dmitry? His own brother? Because Dmitry was hesitating, getting cold feet about the deal with Reeves. Alexei saw that as weakness. Marcus appeared in the doorway, still bleeding. We just got confirmation. Alexei's people hit 3 of our warehouses in the last hour, burned them to the ground. Victor turned, and Elena saw something dangerous flash across his face. Not fear, not even anger. Something colder, more calculated. He's trying to provoke me into making mistakes, Victor said. Wants me emotional, reckless. That's when people get sloppy. So what do we do? Adrian asked. We don't give him what he wants. We stay calm, we stay smart, and we hit him where it hurts. Victor looked at Marcus. Get our people to the shipping yard. Double security on every facility we own. I want eyes on every corner, every entrance, every possible point of attack. Already done. What about the police? Let them investigate. We cooperate fully. We were victims tonight, just like everyone else. Traumatized guests at a charity gala. Victor's smile was thin and humorless. The truth, for once. Marcus left to coordinate, and Adrian moved closer to his father. We should get you out of here, back to the estate where you're protected. I'm not running from this. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to be smart. Smart would have been not coming tonight at all, Victor said, glancing at Elena. But we needed information. Now we have it. Alexei's made his move. He's exposed himself. That's an advantage. It's also a death sentence if we're not careful, Adrian countered. He just killed his own brother and a room full of witnesses. He's got nothing left to lose. Neither do I. The words hung heavy in the air. Elena watched the two men face each other, seeing the same stubborn determination in both sets of eyes. Family resemblance went deeper than looks. Police were flooding the mansion now, shouting commands, securing the scene. A detective Elena didn't recognize pushed into the library, badge held high. Nobody leaves until we get statements. That means all of you. Victor straightened, switching effortlessly into the role of concerned citizen. Of course, detective, whatever you need. This is a tragedy. Those poor people. Elena watched him perform, watched him become someone else entirely. Cooperative, shocked. Just another guest who'd survived something terrible. The detective bought it completely. They gave statements separately. Elena stuck to the truth with strategic omissions. She'd been in the garden with Adrian when the explosion happened. No, she didn't see who planted the device. No, she didn't know Thomas Reeves or the Kozlov brothers personally. Yes, she was terrified. That last part wasn't even a lie. It took hours. By the time the police released them, dawn was breaking over Miami, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed obscene given what had happened. Victor's sedan waited outside, Marcus at the wheel despite the cut on his head. Adrian climbed in front, Elena and Victor in back, the space between them somehow smaller than before. You should sleep, Victor said as they pulled away from the mansion. It's been a long night. I don't think I can sleep. Try anyway. You'll need your strength for what comes next. Elena looked at him. What comes next? Alexei won't stop with warehouses and public spectacles. He'll come after me directly. After my people. After anyone he thinks I care about. Victor's eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. Which means you're in more danger now than you were 3 days ago. Because he might think you care about me. Because he'd be right to think it. The admission caught her off guard. Elena's breath hitched, her pulse suddenly loud in her ears. You barely know me, she managed. I know you saved my life. I know you've stayed calm in situations that would break most people. I know you're stronger than you think you are. Victor paused. And I know that keeping you safe has become more important to me than it probably should be. Adrian shifted in the front seat, clearly listening but not commenting. This is crazy, Elena said. All of this. A week ago I was cleaning hotel rooms and now I'm caught in the middle of a mob war because I walked into the wrong penthouse at the wrong time. Not the wrong time, Victor said quietly. If you hadn't walked in when you did, I'd be dead. Whatever happens next, remember that. They drove in silence for a while, Miami waking up around them, people going about their normal lives completely unaware that 6 people had died last night in an explosion that would dominate the news cycle for weeks. When they arrived at the estate, extra guards were visible everywhere, armed men on the roof, patrols around the perimeter. The place looked like a fortress, which Elena supposed it was. Victor walked her to her room, moving stiffly now that the adrenaline was wearing off. His wound had to be killing him. Get some rest, he said at her door. We'll talk later. Victor. She stopped him before he could leave. What Alexei did tonight, killing all those people. Is that what your world always looks like? He considered the question carefully. Usually it's quieter, more controlled. What happened tonight was chaos. Alexei burning bridges and salting the earth behind him. And you're going to kill him for it. Yes. No hesitation, no justification, just simple truth. Does it bother you? Elena asked. Killing people? Victor's expression was unreadable. It used to. Now it's just something that needs doing, like taking out the garbage or paying bills. Necessary, unpleasant, inevitable. That's horrible. Yes, it is. He met her eyes. I'm not a good man, Elena. I told you that before, but I'm honest about what I am. That's more than most people in my position can say. He left her then, walking down the hallway with that careful, pained gait. Elena watched him go, then closed herself in her room and finally let herself fall apart. She made it to the bathroom before the shaking started, leaned against the marble sink, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back was a stranger. Perfect makeup smudged with smoke, blue dress torn at the hem, eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. Elena stripped off the dress, leaving it in a heap on the floor, and stepped into the shower. Let scalding water wash away the smoke, the dust, the smell of burning that seemed lodged in her sinuses. She stood there until the water ran cold, then stood some more, shivering, trying to remember what normal felt like. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that probably cost more than her last paycheck, someone had been in the room. The destroyed dress was gone. Clean clothes waited on the bed, and on the nightstand, a bottle of sleeping pills with a note in Victor's precise handwriting. In case you need them, don't take more than 2. Elena stared at the bottle for a long time before putting it in the drawer unopened. She didn't want to sleep, didn't want to close her eyes and see those bodies in the ballroom, that woman's abandoned shoe, the blood on Marcus's face. Instead, she dressed in the provided clothes and went looking for answers. The house was quiet, most of the guards outside, the staff nowhere to be seen. Elena wandered through hallways she'd only glimpsed before, past rooms that looked like they'd never been used. The place felt empty despite its size. More museum than home. She found Adrian in what looked like a gym, beating the hell out of a punching bag. He was shirtless, covered in sweat, attacking the bag like it had personally offended him. Can't sleep either? Elena asked from the doorway. Adrian didn't stop punching. Sleeps for people who don't have death threats hanging over their heads. Your father thinks Alexei will come after me. My father's right. You're a loose end. Alexei will want you eliminated. That doesn't scare you? Adrian finally stopped, breathing hard. What scares me is my father caring more about protecting you than protecting himself. That's how good men die, distracted by something they can't afford to lose. Elena stepped into the gym. I didn't ask for any of this. Nobody asked for it. It just happens. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong choices. He grabbed a towel, wiping his face. But you're here now. In it. No going back. What if I want to go back? Then you're stupider than I thought. Adrian tossed the towel aside. You think you can just walk away? Go back to your apartment, your job, your normal life? Alexei knows your face, knows your name, knows you were with my father tonight. You're marked. The only question is whether you survive long enough for it to matter. The brutal honesty was almost refreshing after Victor's careful protection. So what do I do? Elena asked. You learn to fight, learn to shoot, learn to watch your back every second of every day. Adrian moved closer, and Elena saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. Or you accept that my father's going to protect you. Which means staying close to him, which means becoming part of this world, whether you like it or not. And if I don't want either option, then you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. He left her standing there, his words echoing in the empty gym. Elena found her way to the kitchen eventually, needing coffee, needing normal. The room was industrial and pristine, designed to feed an army. She fumbled with an espresso machine that looked like it required an engineering degree, finally giving up and just boiling water for instant coffee. You're doing that wrong. Elena turned to find a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, wearing an apron. The cook probably, or housekeeper. Someone who actually worked here instead of just hiding. I can't figure out the machine, Elena admitted. The woman smiled, moving past her with practiced efficiency. Nobody can accept Mr. Moretti. He's very particular about his coffee. She began preparing the machine properly. I'm Maria. I run the household staff. Elena. I know. The whole staff knows. You're the woman who saved Mr. Moretti's life. Maria glanced at her while the machine hissed and gurgled. That's no small thing. He doesn't forget debts. I'm starting to realize that. Maria pulled 2 cups from a cabinet, preparing coffee for both of them. You look exhausted. I am exhausted. But you can't sleep. No. I understand. I've been here through 3 attempted coups, 2 funerals, and Mr. Moretti's wife dying of cancer. Sleep becomes difficult when you're surrounded by violence. She handed Elena a cup, but it gets easier, eventually. Elena sipped the coffee. It was perfect, rich and strong. Does it bother you, working for someone like Victor? Maria considered this while preparing her own cup. Mr. Moretti is a complicated man. He's done terrible things, but he's also been generous to people who had nowhere else to turn. He paid for my granddaughter's surgery when insurance refused. He gives jobs to people nobody else will hire. He protects his own fiercely. That doesn't make the terrible things okay. No, but it makes him human, not a monster, just a man trying to survive in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. Maria sat across from Elena. You're judging him. That's natural. But be careful not to judge too harshly when you don't understand what shaped him. His wife dying, he told me about that. He told you? Maria's eyebrows rose. That's surprising. He doesn't talk about Catherine, not even with Adrian. He said it changed him, made him what he is. It broke something in him. Before Catherine died, he was different, harder in some ways but softer in others. He laughed more, smiled. After she was gone, it was like watching someone shut down piece by piece until all that was left was the machine that kept him alive. Maria's expression turned sad. Adrian was 12 when his mother died. He watched his father disappear into this life, this darkness, and he's been trying to pull him back ever since. But you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Elena thought about Victor's words in the car, about caring for her more than he should, about keeping her safe being important. He's going to get himself killed trying to protect me, isn't he? She asked. Probably, but that's his choice to make, not yours to prevent. Maria finished her coffee. The question is what you'll do with that protection. Waste it feeling guilty, or use it to become someone stronger than you were before? Before Elena could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the house. Maria was on her feet immediately, moving toward the panic room Elena hadn't known existed. Come with me. Now! What's happening? Breach. Someone's on the property. They ran through hallways, Maria moving with surprising speed for her age. Other staff members appeared, all heading in the same direction. A hidden door in the library opened to reveal a reinforced room with monitors showing every angle of the estate. On the screens, Elena saw them, armed men scaling the walls, cutting through security fences, moving with military precision toward the house. Alexei? She breathed. Lock it down. Marcus's voice came through a speaker. Full lockdown protocol. Nobody in or out until we clear the threat. The door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. Elena and Maria and 3 other staff members were trapped in a room with enough supplies to last a week, but no way to help the people outside fighting for their lives. On the monitors, Elena watched guards engage the invaders. Gunfire lit up the darkness. Men fell on both sides. It was chaos, brutal and efficient, nothing like the movies made it look. Then she saw Victor running from the house toward the fight despite his wound, despite the danger. Marcus was beside him, trying to pull him back, but Victor shook him off. Adrian appeared from another angle, weapon drawn, covering his father's advance. He's going to get killed, one of the staff members whispered. Elena pressed closer to the monitors, watching Victor move through the fight like he'd done this 1,000 times before. He had, she realized. This was his life. Violence and strategy and survival. An explosion rocked the east wall, the same wall that had been damaged in the gala attack. Alexei wasn't just trying to kill Victor. He was trying to destroy everything Victor had built. How long until police arrive? Elena asked. Maria checked another monitor. We've disabled the automatic alerts. Can't have police seeing what we're really dealing with here. It's just us. That's insane. That's survival. Police would ask too many questions, find too much evidence. Better to handle this ourselves. On screen, Victor took down 2 attackers with precision shots, then disappeared around a corner. The cameras lost him. Elena's heart hammered. She'd known this man for 4 days, and somehow the thought of losing him felt impossible, unbearable. There! Maria pointed to another screen. Victor had circled around, coming up behind the main group of attackers. He moved silently, a ghost in his own home, taking out stragglers one by one. Then Elena saw him. Alexei Kozlov, standing in the garden near where she and Adrian had been when the gala exploded. He was directing his men, orchestrating the assault from relative safety. Victor saw him too. They faced each other across 50 feet of manicured lawn, weapons raised, the battle raging around them. "Don't," Elena whispered to the screen. "Don't do it." But Victor was already moving, closing the distance, no longer content to pick off soldiers when the general was right there. Alexei smiled, said something Elena couldn't hear, and fired. The shot went wide, maybe intentionally. Victor returned fire, hitting Alexei in the shoulder. Not fatal. Painful. They circled each other like wolves, both bleeding now, both beyond reason. Then Adrian was there, coming from Alexei's blind side, weapon trained on the Russian's head. "Don't move!" His voice came through the speakers, clear and cold. Alexei froze. Victor lowered his weapon slightly, breathing hard. "It's over, Alexei. Your men are dead or running. You're alone." "I'm never alone." Alexei's smile was bloody. "You think this ends with me? I've got people everywhere, in your organization, in your home. You'll never be safe, Moretti. Never." "Maybe not, but at least I'll be alive." Victor raised his weapon. "Dad," Adrian said, "don't. Not like this. Not in front of witnesses." He meant the cameras, the recordings that could be used against them. Victor hesitated, and in that moment, Alexei moved, pulled a knife from somewhere, threw it with desperate accuracy. It hit Adrian in the thigh, dropping him instantly. Victor's hesitation evaporated. He fired 3 times, center mass, professional and final. Alexei fell, dead before he hit the ground. The battle was over. Elena watched Victor drop to his knees beside Adrian, watched him apply pressure to the wound, watched the son he'd been trying to protect bleed on the grass because of a moment's mercy. "We need to get out there," Elena said, moving toward the door. "It's not safe yet," Maria warned. "I don't care." Maria studied her, then nodded slowly. "All right, but stay behind me." They unsealed the panic room and emerged into a house that smelled like gunpowder and death. Bodies littered the grounds, most wearing black tactical gear. Victor's guards were securing the perimeter, checking for survivors. Elena found Victor and Adrian in the garden, Marcus already there with a medical kit. "How bad?" Victor was asking, his voice tight. "Bad enough," Adrian gritted out, pale and sweating. "But I'll live." "You shouldn't have come out. You should have stayed in position." "And let you face him alone?" "Right." Victor's jaw clenched, emotion breaking through the walls he usually kept so carefully maintained. "You could have died. So could you. That's the job." Elena knelt beside them, not sure what to do but needing to be close. Victor looked up, saw her, and something in his expression cracked completely. "You should be in the panic room," he said. "I should be a lot of places I'm not." She touched his shoulder, felt him trembling. "It's over. Alexei's dead. For now. But there will be others. There are always others. Then we'll deal with them when they come." The "we" slipped out without thought, but Elena didn't take it back. Couldn't take it back. Because somewhere in the last 4 days, somewhere between the penthouse and the gala, and this moment in a blood-soaked garden, she'd stopped being a hostage and started being something else entirely. Victor seemed to understand. His hand found hers, squeezed once, a silent acknowledgement of the shift between them. "Let's get you both inside," Marcus said, ever practical. "Clean these wounds properly. Then we've got about 20 bodies to dispose of before sunrise." Elena should have been horrified, should have run, screamed, demanded to leave. Instead, she helped Marcus lift Adrian, supporting his weight while Victor struggled to his feet, his own wound reopened and bleeding through his shirt. They limped back to the house together, three broken people held together by something stronger than logic or fear. And Elena realized that Maria had been right. You couldn't save someone who didn't want to be saved, but maybe you could stand beside them in the darkness and refuse to let them fall alone. Dr. Chen worked on Adrian in the same study where he'd treated Victor's gunshot wound 5 days earlier. The knife had gone deep into the muscle but missed the artery, which meant Adrian would heal but would be limping for weeks. Elena sat in the corner, watching Victor pace despite his own reopened wound, despite Dr. Chen's repeated insistence that he sit down before he passed out. "I'm fine," Victor said for the third time, his shirt soaked through with blood. "You're not fine, Doctor," Chen said, not looking up from Adrian's leg. "You're stubborn and bleeding and approximately 10 minutes from needing a transfusion. Sit down." Victor sat, finally, in the chair beside Elena. His hand found hers automatically, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly. "I watched you kill a man tonight." "I know." "I should be horrified." "Are you?" Elena thought about it, really thought about it. Alexei had been trying to kill them all, had killed 6 people at the gala, burned Victor's warehouses, sent armed men to slaughter everyone in this house. Self-defense didn't even begin to cover what Victor had done. "No," she said finally. "I'm not. Does that make me a bad person?" "It makes you a realistic one." Victor winced as Dr. Chen finished with Adrian and moved to examine him. The world isn't divided into good people and bad people. It's divided into people who admit what they're capable of and people who lie to themselves about it. Dr. Chen cut away Victor's shirt, revealing the gunshot wound that had torn open during the fight. Fresh blood mixed with old, the bandage Elena had applied in the penthouse a lifetime ago, completely destroyed. "You're going to need real medical care for this," Dr. Chen said. "Hospital care." "No hospitals." "Then you're risking infection, permanent damage, possibly your life. I've risked worse for less." Victor looked at the doctor steadily. "Just patch me up. I'll survive." Dr. Chen sighed, but didn't argue further. He'd clearly had this conversation before and knew when he'd lost. Adrian was asleep now, the painkillers Dr. Chen had given him finally kicking in. He looked younger, unconscious, the hard edges smoothed away. Elena wondered what he'd been like as a child, before his mother died, before this life consumed him. "He'll be okay," Victor said, following her gaze. "He's strong, like his mother. He's angry, like his father." That pulled something like a smile from Victor. "Fair point." Marcus appeared in the doorway, covered in dirt and blood that probably wasn't his. "Perimeter's secure. We've got 19 bodies to deal with, and we found something you need to see." "What kind of something?" "The kind that explains how they knew exactly where to hit us." Victor stood despite Dr. Chen's protests, following Marcus out. Elena went too, not waiting for permission. They descended to a basement level Elena hadn't known existed, through concrete corridors that looked more bunker than house. Marcus led them to what appeared to be a small apartment, simply furnished but clearly lived in. One of the guards stood there, looking sick. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't know." On the bed lay a woman Elena recognized. Young, pretty, one of the household staff she'd seen in passing. She was unconscious, a syringe on the nightstand beside her. "This is Natasha," Marcus said. "She's been with us for 6 months. Background check came back clean. References were solid. But we found this." He held up a phone, showed Victor the screen. Text messages between Natasha and someone named A. Detailed information about the estate's security, Victor's movements, even Elena's presence in the house. "Alexei's plant," Victor said, his voice flat. "How long?" "Looks like from the beginning. She was inserted specifically to gather intelligence." "Is she dead?" "Overdose. Looks self-inflicted. Probably knew we'd find her after the attack failed." Victor stared at the unconscious woman, and Elena saw something cold and terrible in his expression. "Get her out of my house. I don't care where. Just gone." "Yes, sir." They climbed back upstairs in silence. Elena's mind was racing, processing what she'd seen. Alexei hadn't just attacked randomly. He'd planned this for months, maybe longer. Had someone living in Victor's house, eating at his table, reporting his every move. "How do you live like this?" Elena asked when they were back in the study. "Never knowing who you can trust?" "You trust very carefully, and you accept that eventually everyone betrays you. It's just a question of when and why." Victor lowered himself back into the chair, exhaustion written across every line of his face. "I trusted Catherine. Look where that got her. She didn't betray you. She died. She died because I couldn't protect her. Same result." Dr. Chen had finished cleaning the wound and was applying fresh bandages. "You need rest. Both wounds, the blood loss, the stress. Your body can only take so much. My body will take what I give it. Stubborn doesn't make you immortal." "No, but it's kept me alive this long." Dr. Chen packed his supplies, shaking his head. "I'll check on Adrian in a few hours. Try not to do anything stupid before then." After he left, Elena and Victor sat in the quiet study, listening to the sounds of cleanup outside. Men moving bodies, hosing blood off marble, erasing evidence of a battle that had nearly killed them all. "What happens now?" Elena asked. "Now we find out who else was working with Alexei, who funded his operation, who stands to benefit from my death." Victor's eyes were half closed, fighting the exhaustion. "Reeves is dead, but his empire doesn't just disappear. Someone will try to claim it. We need to know who before they make their move. You're talking about more violence. I'm talking about survival." Elena stood, moved to the window. Dawn was breaking, pink and gold over Miami, like the night's horrors had never happened. "I've been thinking about something you said, about having choices." "What about it?" "You said you stopped asking whether killing bothered you because the answer didn't change anything. But that's not true. The answer changes everything." Victor opened his eyes fully, looking at her. "How do you figure?" "Because if it stopped bothering you completely, you'd be a monster. The fact that you remember it used to matter means part of you is still human, still capable of being something other than this." She turned to face him. "Your wife's death broke you, but it doesn't have to define you forever." Spoken like someone who hasn't lost everything. "I lost my parents at 6, lost every foster family that might have kept me, lost any chance at a normal life the moment I walked into that penthouse." Elena's voice was steady. "I know what loss looks like, and I know the difference between letting it destroy you and letting it make you stronger." Victor was quiet for a long moment. "You sound like Catherine. She used to say things like that. Maybe you should have listened to her." "Maybe I should have." He stood, moving to join her at the window. "But I can't go back. Can't undo 23 years of choices. This is who I am now." "Then be who you are with intention. Not because you're too broken to be anything else, but because you choose it. Own it. That's the difference between being a victim of your circumstances and being the author of your life." Victor studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. "When did you get so wise?" "I've had a hell of a week." That pulled a real laugh from him, short and surprised. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less weighted by the violence he carried. "I meant what I said before," Victor said quietly. "About caring what happens to you. About keeping you safe being important. I know. It's dangerous for both of us. I know that too. And you're staying anyway." It wasn't a question, but Elena answered it. "I'm staying." Victor's hand came up, cupping her face with surprising gentleness for a man who'd killed someone just hours ago. "Why?" "Because someone needs to remind you that you're human. And because I'm tired of running from things that scare me." Elena leaned into his touch. "And because when I thought you might die out there, I realized that I've spent my whole life avoiding anything that might hurt me. No connections, no risks, no real living, just existing. Existing is safer. Existing is lonely. I don't want to be lonely anymore." Victor's thumb brushed her cheekbone, and Elena saw something vulnerable flash in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or hope. Perhaps both. "I can't promise you safety," he said, Can't promise you a normal life or anything resembling peace. I don't want promises. I want truth. I want someone who sees me and doesn't look away. Elena's hand covered his. I want to matter to someone. Really matter. Even if it's complicated and dangerous and probably stupid. It's definitely stupid. Then we'll be stupid together. Victor kissed her then, soft and careful, like she might break. Elena kissed him back, tasting coffee and blood and something that felt dangerously close to hope. When they pulled apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. This doesn't fix anything, doesn't make me less of what I am. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to stand next to you while you figure out who you want to be. And if I never figure it out, then at least you won't be alone while you don't. They stood there as Miami woke up outside, two broken people holding onto each other like life rafts in a storm. The next week passed in a blur of investigation and recovery. Adrian healed slowly, complaining about being bedridden but following doctor's orders under threat of his father's wrath. Victor worked from home, coordinating his people, tracking down Alexei's remaining associates, slowly dismantling the threat piece by piece. Elena found herself drawn deeper into the operation, not because Victor forced her, but because she chose it. She had a talent for seeing patterns others missed, connections that seemed invisible until she pointed them out. Her years of being invisible herself had taught her how to watch, how to listen, how to notice the details people thought they were hiding. She discovered the flaw in Alexei's empire almost by accident. It was late afternoon and she was reviewing files Marcus had compiled on Reeves's business holdings. Most of it was legitimate on the surface. Real estate, import-export companies, shipping contracts. But one company kept appearing in unusual contexts. A logistics firm called Meridian Solutions. It had contracts with half the port facilities in Miami, handled shipments for dozens of businesses, and on paper looked completely legitimate. Except Elena recognized the signature on several documents. She'd seen it before, on the charity gala invitation. Thomas Reeves's assistant, a woman named Patricia Chen. This doesn't make sense, Elena said, showing Victor the files in his study. Why would Reeves's personal assistant be signing off on routine logistics contracts? Victor scanned the documents, his expression sharpening. Unless they weren't routine. What do you mean? Meridian Solutions handles shipments for my operations too, has for years. If Reeves controlled it through his assistant, if he had access to our shipping schedules, manifests, routes, Victor was already pulling up more files on his computer. He could see everything, every weakness in our supply chain. And he could use that information to what? Steal shipments? Or redirect them, make it look like my people were skimming product, create internal conflicts, weaken my organization from the inside while preparing to swoop in and take over. Victor's jaw clenched. That bastard was planning this for months, maybe years. But he's dead now. So who controls Meridian Solutions? That was the question that changed everything. They discovered the answer 2 days later after Marcus had his tech people dig into Meridian's corporate structure. The company was owned by a shell corporation, which was owned by another shell corporation, layers of obfuscation designed to hide the real owner. But Elena found the thread. A single document filed 3 years ago, before Reeves had gotten careful about covering his tracks. An operating agreement signed by the company's true owner, Patricia Chen, Reeves's assistant, who was still very much alive. She's been running it the whole time, Elena said, spreading documents across Victor's desk. Reeves was the public face, but she controlled the actual operation. All those shell companies trace back to her, which means everything Reeves was planning, every contract, every shipment, every piece of leverage he had against you, she has it now. Victor stared at the documents, and Elena watched him process the implications. We've been so focused on the Kozlovs and Reeves that we missed the real threat. She's still out there, still has access to your shipping information, still can manipulate everything Reeves was manipulating. Can she take over his empire? She already has. Look. Elena pulled up more records. 3 days after Reeves died, Meridian Solutions filed paperwork consolidating control over his logistics operations. She's claiming it as debt repayment. Says Reeves owed the company millions, and now she's collecting by taking his assets. That's brilliant, Victor said, a note of grudging respect in his voice. Nobody's even questioning it because it looks like standard business practice. But she's essentially inheriting everything he built, which makes her your problem now. Yes, it does. Lena expected Victor to react with anger, with violence, with the same brutal efficiency he'd shown against Alexei, but instead, he smiled. "What?" she asked. "You just solved a problem my entire organization missed, in less than a week with no training, just by being smart and paying attention." He looked at her with something that made her chest tight. "You're extraordinary. I just connected some dots. You saw the pattern everyone else missed. That's not just intelligence, that's instinct. The kind I can't teach my people no matter how hard I try." Elena felt herself flush. "So what do we do about Patricia Chen?" "We do what I should have done with Reeves from the start. We make her an offer she can't refuse." They arranged the meeting for neutral ground, a restaurant in Coconut Grove, expensive and public enough that violence was unlikely. Patricia Chen arrived alone, poised in a gray suit that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe, her expression giving nothing away. Victor had brought Elena, Marcus, and Adrian, who was still limping but insisted on coming. They sat across from Patricia like a business negotiation, which in many ways it was. "Mr. Moretti," Patricia said, her voice cool and professional, "I was surprised to get your call. I imagine you were expecting something more direct, a bullet instead of a conversation." The thought crossed my mind. She sipped her water calmly. "But you're smarter than Thomas gave you credit for. That's why he's dead and you're not. Thomas made the mistake of thinking muscle was more important than intelligence. You clearly don't share that flaw. I've worked with powerful men my whole career. The ones who survive are the ones who use their brains before their guns." Patricia's eyes flicked to Elena. "And you must be the housekeeper who's been causing such interesting complications." Elena met her gaze steadily. "I prefer to think of myself as a complication solver." "I can see why Victor keeps you around." Victor leaned forward slightly. "Let's cut through the pleasantries. You control Meridian Solutions, which means you control access to shipping routes I need. I could fight you for it, burn your operation to the ground like I did Alexei's. But that would be messy and expensive for both of us. So you're proposing an alternative, a partnership. You keep Meridian Solutions. Keep the legitimate business operations. But you work with me instead of against me. Share information. Coordinate shipments. We both profit. Nobody dies." Patricia considered this. "What's to stop you from killing me once you have what you need?" "The same thing that stops you from selling me out to my competitors. Mutual benefit. You're smart enough to run this operation, which means you're smart enough to know that killing you makes me enemies I don't need. I'd rather have you as an ally than spend the next year fighting your successors. And if I refuse, then you'll be just as dead as Reeves and the Kozlovs, but you'll have brought it on yourself by choosing pride over pragmatism." The restaurant noise filled the silence while Patricia thought. Elena watched her, saw the calculations behind those calm eyes. This woman wasn't afraid, wasn't intimidated. She was assessing value, weighing risks, making a business decision. 60-40 split, Patricia said, finally. "I get 60% of the profits from joint operations. You get 40 and full access to my logistics network. 50-50 or I find another partner. My network is worth more than that." "Your network is worthless if you're dead." Patricia smiled, thin and sharp. "Fair point. 50-50, but I maintain operational control. You don't touch my infrastructure or my people." "Agreed, but I want quarterly reports, full transparency on anything that affects my operations." "Done, Zek." Patricia extended her hand. "I look forward to a long and profitable relationship, Mr. Moretti." Victor shook her hand, sealing the deal. Elena watched the exchange and felt something shift. This was different from the violence, different from the blood and bullets. This was power in its purest form. Two people recognizing mutual strength and choosing cooperation over destruction. "You're good at this," Elena said later, back at the estate. "The negotiation, the strategy. I was a lawyer for 15 years. I know how to make deals." Victor poured them both whiskey, something expensive from a crystal decanter. "Violence is a tool, but it's not the only tool. Sometimes the smartest move is to make an enemy into an ally. Will she honor the agreement? As long as it benefits her, yes. The moment it doesn't, she'll look for ways to undermine me. But that's true of everyone in this business. At least now she has a reason to keep me alive. Elena accepted the whiskey, sipping carefully. It burned in the best way. So what happens now? With us? Victor set down his glass. That depends on what you want. I want to stay, not as a prisoner or a guest, as someone who belongs here. You want to be part of this world. I want to be part of your world. There's a difference. Victor crossed to where she stood, taking the whiskey from her hand and setting it aside. You understand what that means. The danger, the moral compromises, the things you'll see, and the things you'll have to do. I understand that life is messy and complicated, and that trying to stay clean means staying isolated. I'm done being isolated. You could have a normal life. I could set you up somewhere safe, somewhere away from all this. I don't want safe. I want real. And this, whatever this is between us, it's the most real thing I've felt in years. Victor's hands framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. I'm going to hurt you. Maybe not intentionally, but it'll happen. This life, it damages everyone it touches. Then we'll be damaged together. That's better than being undamaged and alone. He kissed her like she was something precious and breakable, which was funny considering she'd watched him kill a man and hadn't flinched. But maybe that's what he needed. Someone who could see the violence and the vulnerability and accept both. When they pulled apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. I can't be what you deserve. You can be what I choose. That's enough. Over the next month, Elena settled into a life she'd never imagined. She learned the business, not just the violence, but the legitimate operations that funded it. Shipping routes and import regulations, and the 1,000 small details that kept Victor's empire running. She was good at it, better than she expected, her years of invisible observation translating into strategic insight. Adrian warmed to her gradually, his suspicion fading into grudging respect after she'd identified the Patricia Chen threat. He still made jokes about her being a complication, but there was affection in it now. Family affection, the kind that came with shared trauma and survival. You're growing on me, he admitted one afternoon while they reviewed shipping manifests. Like a fungus, but still. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. I have a reputation to maintain. But he smiled when he said it, and Elena smiled back, and she thought about how family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was just people who chose to stand together when everything else was falling apart. Victor healed slowly, the gunshot wound finally closing properly under Dr. Chen's watchful care. He moved easier, smiled more, some of the weight he carried seeming lighter. Elena didn't fool herself into thinking she'd changed him fundamentally, but maybe she'd reminded him that change was possible. They had dinner together most nights, sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with Adrian and Marcus and other members of Victor's inner circle. Elena learned their stories, their histories, the paths that had brought them to this life. Most had nowhere else to go, no other skills, no way back to the world they'd left behind. They'd made their choices and lived with them, and that was its own kind of courage. You never talk about your foster homes, Victor said one night after everyone else had left. They were in his study, Elena curled in the chair she'd started thinking of as hers, Victor at his desk reviewing contracts. Not much to tell, bounced around. Some places were okay, some weren't. Which ones weren't? Elena set down the book she'd been pretending to read. There was a family when I was 10, the Hendersons. Nice house, nice neighborhood. They wanted a daughter badly. Their own daughter had died in an accident, and they thought I could replace her. That must have been hard. It was impossible. They wanted me to be Emily, wear her clothes, sleep in her room, like her same foods. Every time I did something that wasn't what Emily would have done, they got disappointed. Eventually, they sent me back. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. You can't be someone else just because people want you to be. You have to be yourself, even if yourself doesn't fit what anyone expects. Victor looked at her for a long moment. Is that what you're doing here? Being yourself? I'm figuring out who that is. Turns out I'm someone who can handle violence without falling apart. Someone who's good at strategy and pattern recognition. Someone who doesn't need to be protected from harsh truths. Elena met his eyes. Someone who can love a complicated man without trying to simplify him. Love? The word hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Elena could have taken it back, made it lighter, laughed it off, but she'd meant what she said about being herself. Yes, love. The messy, complicated kind that doesn't fix anything but makes the broken parts easier to carry. Victor stood, moved to where she sat, pulled her to her feet. I haven't said those words to anyone since Catherine died. I'm not asking you to say them. What if I want to? Then say them because you mean them, not because I said them first. Victor's smile was soft and real. I love you, Elena Cross. I don't know when it happened or how, but somewhere between you saving my life and you choosing to stay in it, I fell completely. Elena kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. They moved from the study to his bedroom, the one room in the house that felt actually lived in, and they came together with the desperate tenderness of people who'd both been alone too long. Later, lying in sheets that smelled like expensive detergent and Victor's cologne, Elena stared at the ceiling and thought about paths not taken. She could have walked away from that penthouse, could have refused to go to the gala, could have left a dozen times when the smart choice was obvious, but smart and right weren't always the same thing. What are you thinking? Victor asked, his hand tracing patterns on her shoulder. That I walked into the wrong room and found exactly where I was supposed to be. That's either very romantic or very delusional. Can't it be both? Victor laughed, the sound low and genuine. With us? Probably. 6 months later, Elena stood in Victor's study wearing a dress that actually belonged to her this time. Watching Miami through windows she'd come to think of as home. The house had changed in small ways. Fresh flowers in the hallways, courtesy of Maria, who'd declared the place too sterile. Photos on the walls, moments captured and displayed instead of hidden. Adrian smiling at a family dinner. Victor and Elena at the beach, his arm around her shoulders, both of them squinting against the sun. The violence hadn't stopped. Probably never would. There were still threats, still enemies, still nights when Victor came home with blood on his hands and shadows in his eyes. But there was also this. Quiet moments, shared laughter, a life being built piece by careful piece. You ready? Adrian asked from the doorway. He was in a suit, looking uncomfortable and handsome. The knife wound from Alexei's attack just a scar now. As ready as I'll ever be. You could still run. I parked a car out back just in case. Elena smiled. Not running. Not anymore. They walked downstairs together, Adrian escorting her like the brother he'd become over the months of learning to trust her. The house was filled with people, a strange mix of Victor's world and the small pieces of Elena's past she'd managed to salvage. Maria and the household staff, Marcus and the guards who'd become familiar faces. Even Patricia Chen had sent flowers, a gesture of respect between allies. At the end of the hallway, in a room filled with white flowers and afternoon light, Victor waited. He looked nervous, which was funny considering she'd seen him face down armed men without flinching. But this was different. This was vulnerability without violence, commitment without coercion. When Elena reached him, he took her hands and she saw everything in his eyes. Love, fear, hope. The same thing she felt reflected back. You sure about this? He whispered. Positive. It's not too late to change your mind. Victor Moretti. Are you trying to talk me out of marrying you? Just giving you every opportunity to escape. I don't want to escape. I want to stay. The ceremony was simple, officiated by a judge Victor knew who asked no questions about the groom's business dealings. The vows were traditional, but Elena added her own. I promise to see you completely, the darkness and the light, the violence and the tenderness. And I promise to love all of it, not despite what you are, but because of it, because you're real, because you're mine. Victor's voice was rough when he spoke his own addition. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to give you truth even when lies would be easier. And I promise that every day I have with you will be a day spent trying to be worthy of the gift you've given me, the gift of being seen and loved anyway. When they kissed, sealing promises that would probably be tested 1,000 times in the years to come, Elena felt something settle in her chest, not the absence of fear, not perfect happiness, just the bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The reception was small, held in the gardens that had seen so much violence, but were now strung with lights and filled with music. Elena danced with Victor, with Adrian, with Marcus, who turned out to be surprisingly graceful for a man built like a tank. "Welcome to the family," Adrian said during their dance. "Officially. Was I not already family?" "You were, but now it's legal, which means you're stuck with us. Could think of worse fates. Give it time, we're very annoying." Elena laughed, and over Adrian's shoulder she saw Victor watching them, his expression soft in a way she'd learned was reserved for moments when he felt safe enough to let his guard down. Later, when the guests had left and the staff had cleaned up, Elena and Victor sat in the garden where Alexei had died. The memory of violence faded into just another piece of their complicated history. "No regrets?" Victor asked. "Not a single one." "You?" "Just that I didn't find you sooner. We found each other when we were supposed to. Any earlier and I wouldn't have been ready. Wouldn't have been strong enough." "You've always been strong. You just didn't know it yet." Elena leaned into him, his arm coming around her automatically. "What do you think happens now?" "Now we live. We work. We fight when we have to and love when we can. We build something that matters. And when the next threat comes, we handle it together, like we handled Alexei, like we handled Patricia Chen, like we'll handle whatever comes next." It wasn't a promise of safety, wasn't a guarantee of happiness, just a commitment to face whatever came as a team, as partners, as two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided that broken was okay as long as they were broken together. 3 years later, Elena sat in the same study where she'd once been a prisoner, reviewing quarterly reports from Meridian Solutions. Patricia Chen had kept her word, the partnership profitable for everyone involved. Victor's empire had expanded, legitimized, the violence still present but more carefully managed. Adrian had taken over more of the day-to-day operations, growing into his role as Victor's successor with surprising grace. He'd even started dating someone, a lawyer named Rebecca, who knew exactly what family she was joining and chose it anyway. The house felt different now. Less fortress, more home. There were toys in the hallways sometimes, evidence of the children Victor's lieutenants were starting to have, the next generation growing up in a world their parents were trying to make slightly less brutal. Elena heard footsteps and looked up to find Victor in the doorway, carrying a small bundle wrapped in pink blankets. "She's awake," he said, his voice soft with wonder. Elena crossed to him, looking down at the daughter they'd brought home from the hospital 2 weeks ago. Isabella Catherine Moretti, named for the woman who'd raised Elena and the woman Victor had never stopped loving. Their daughter, the proof that something beautiful could come from broken pieces. "She has your eyes," Victor said. "She has your stubborn chin. We're in trouble when she's older. We're in trouble now." They stood together, new parents fumbling through something neither of them had been prepared for, but both were determined to do right. Victor had been terrified throughout the pregnancy, convinced he'd make the same mistakes his father had made, pass on the same damage. But Elena had watched him with their daughter and seen something different. Gentleness. Patience. A determination to break cycles instead of repeating them. "I've been thinking," Victor said, "about scaling back, letting Adrian handle more, spending more time here. You'd go crazy in a week. Maybe. But I'd rather go crazy at home with you than sane and alone in the world." Elena kissed him softly, careful not to wake the baby sleeping between them. "We'll figure it out. We always do." And they would. It wouldn't be perfect. There would still be threats, still violence, still nights when the darkness seemed too heavy to carry. But there would also be this. Moments of peace stolen from chaos, a family built from nothing, love that had survived impossible odds and come out stronger for it. Elena thought about the girl who'd walked into a penthouse seeking silence and found a wounded man with a gun. How terrified she'd been, how certain she was about to die. She'd been wrong about dying, but she'd been right about one thing. That moment had changed everything. Not because it was the wrong room at the wrong time, but because it was exactly the right room at exactly the right moment. The place where a lonely housekeeper and a dying mob paw boss had collided and discovered that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst circumstances. Sometimes you have to walk into danger to find out what you're capable of. Sometimes you have to accept the darkness in someone to see the light. Sometimes the wrong choice is the only right one. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, you find a person who sees all your broken pieces and loves you, not despite them, but because they match their own. Elena had spent her whole life invisible, unnoticed, a ghost moving through other people's spaces. Now she was seen, known, loved, and that was worth every risk she'd taken to get here. Victor held her closer, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them, and outside the Miami sun set over a city that would never know the whole truth about the people in this house, would never understand the violence and the tenderness, the empire and the love, the darkness and the light that coexisted in the same space. But Elena understood, and Victor understood, and that was enough. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not the perfection they'd never achieve or the safety they'd never guarantee, but the choice they made every single day to stand together anyway. To be broken and loved, to be dangerous and tender, to be exactly who they were without apology or shame, and to build something beautiful from the wreckage of who they'd been before. That was their story. Messy, violent, complicated, real, and it was theirs.